Our topic this month is a successful man. And when we say a successful man, naturally we mean a successful human, which includes the women as well. And I consider myself to be an extremely lucky person. I also consider myself to be an extremely rich person. Notice I did not say wealthy. I consider myself to be a rich person, and I consider that because of my relationships. To me, relationships are the most valuable thing that we have. And all my life, when I was small into my adulthood, I was always surrounded by great men. Be they relatives, friends, mentors, or colleagues. I had an extremely hard-working father. My dad was a painter, and he would paint houses and skyscrapers for J.P. Carroll and Company all week. And then on the weekend, he would go down and clean the offices for J.P. Carroll and Company. And sometimes he'd take me with him to clean the offices. Very hard-working man. But my father also was the one who introduced me to healthy living. Back way in the 50s, before it was popular, he had me drinking carrot juice and cabbage juice and, and all this stuff. I'm like, ooh, Dad, do I have to? But he also introduced me to something of a little more substance. He introduced me to spiritual giants like Emmanuel Swedenborg. Now, my father never claimed to be a part of any new thought movement, but he read these great writers, and I encourage all of you, if you've never read anything by Emmanuel Swedenborg, to take a closer look. My father also gave me some instruction, I'll call it. Sometimes it appeared to be a threat. When I'd be cutting up and showing out, he'd look at me and say, boy, don't you let your wooden God fool you. But he also told me something that helps me to this day, and I try to encourage young people, and I'll tell some of you not so young people the same thing. He said, always pay yourself first. Now, what did he mean? What he meant was, because I'm, throwing papers, and I'm shining shoes, I'm doing all the stuff that young guys did to make a little money. Always take whatever, no matter how little it is, and put a little bit away. If somebody gives you a penny, put away every 10th penny. But he made that impression on me at a very young age to always set something off to the side for yourself, because one day you're not going to be able to work. And you're going to need to have something stashed, and particularly if you got a wife and a daughter that likes to travel. But I've always been blessed to be surrounded by these great, hard-working men. I had uncles. My mother had 4 brothers. None of them finished high school until they were well into their adult years. But all of them ended up being business owners. And as business owners, because of the type of businesses they own, I was able to get some of the greatest pearls of wisdom I've ever gotten from some winos sitting in front of the milk crates in front of their liquor stores. So you see, it doesn't matter where you are in life. You can contribute to someone else's success in life. I've been blessed to know men who've accumulated great wealth, high corporate positions. I know a lot of entrepreneurial icons, celebrities, athletes, political leaders. I've been blessed to be mentored by some of the greatest spiritual leaders in this city. And I have just as many friends in law enforcement as I do that are street hustlers. But the truth is, it doesn't matter whether you're sitting at the top floor of a high-rise or a milk crate in front of a retail establishment. All of us, everyone in this room is successful at something. You see, because success simply means accomplishing your aim or your purpose. Now, I know somebody's thinking right now, Reverend Jerrold, I know some most of us strive to encourage others to be associated with words like popular, wealthy, prosperous, victorious, happy, healthy, thriving, philanthropic, and accomplished. All synonyms of success. And most of us live our lives wanting to just apply one of those words to one area of our life. But I'm going to dedicate what I have to say today, since this is Father's Day. I'm going to dedicate it to a man who can be described by every one of those synonyms that I've mentioned. His name is Adolph Doolin. You know him as the king of soul food. Adolph is celebrating his birthday this weekend and spending his Father's Day, as he often does, with his family. Now, I'm not dedicating this to Adolph Doolin because he's a successful entrepreneur. I'm not calling his name out because, as he'll tell you, he grew up in a little shack in the backwoods of Oklahoma on our kids' back porch and was one of the first in his family to be educated and get a degree and come to Los Angeles and have a successful career as a social worker, and then decide to go out on his own and open up a hamburger stand next to page 4 called Hamburger City. And Hamburger City moved to the marina where it went completely bankrupt. But being the man that he is, he didn't stop. He had vision and he had faith. Hamburger City became our kids' back porch. And them folks in the marina started eating a whole bunch of collard greens and fried chicken. But I'm not celebrating him for that success. I'm celebrating him because in his success, Adolph Doolin went way out of his way to talk and work with anybody who opened up a soul food restaurant. He didn't look at them as competition. He took the time to sit with them and help them if they would accept it, so they too could be successful at their business. That's why I'm dedicating this to Adolph Doolin, because that is the type of person that he was, or is, I should say. Whatever your aim, whatever your goal, it's important to realize success in this material world can be fleeting and temporary. Yeah. But there are some characteristics of a successful man or woman that we're pointing out this month that are sustaining and everlasting. They help produce and maintain a quality of life that supersedes your station in life. They help you to maintain an attitude of gratitude for this journey that you call your life, no matter what experiences you go through in it. You see, you don't need to be wealthy. You don't need to be famous, nor do you need to be highly educated to be successful. But what you do need to be is truthful. You need to speak the truth. You need to remain true to yourself and your values and your God. You do need to be faithful. You need to maintain the vision and desire and drive to keep pushing, no matter what obstacles or detours that show up in your life. You must be prayerful. You must have a personal relationship with the power and presence of God. You have to consistently and continually acknowledge and communicate with that power and presence and express that nature as your life. And yes, you must be loving. You must be loving enough to accept yourself and everyone else just as they are, knowing that the power of love can change anything for the betterment of all. Now, I know when I say that, some of you might think of some of the current events that have just recently happened, and you look at all these tragedies, these mass shootings and singers getting shot on stage and babies being snatched from the ocean shore. And you say, how can all this mayhem occur? How does all this stuff happen? Love. Love is the only power that can change the consciousness of humanity to end all suffering and all grief and all despair. Yes. Dropping bombs on villages where there are babies and children and mothers isn't going to fix terrorism. That's right. Locking up everybody the things that are happening in our society. The only thing that's going to make it stop is us extending the unconditional power of love to one another. The only thing that's going to make it stop is for us to love someone enough to let somebody know when they're not thinking right. You see, because we all know when I was a little kid, we knew Bobo wasn't right. We watched him, we played with him. But Grandma, my baby's all right. He just we got to call it like it is. That's right. Yeah. We got to know when someone needs help and help them get that help. Amen. That's love. Yes. That's putting your ego and your pride aside. Right. That's reaching out and wrapping your arms around somebody and putting them in a position where they can succeed. Love is the only thing that can change our conditions. But not enough of us believe it's possible. Most of us believe we're going to hell in a handbasket no matter what happens. So we do whatever we're going to do and let them do whatever they want to do. And then just complain about it and say, ooh, look, see what happened. So we must also be wise. We must continue to seek the kingdom, which is the highest level of consciousness, because it's right thinking that leads to right actions. Yeah. We must be responsible. The ability to accept praise must be accompanied by the ability to accept criticism. Amen. We have to walk with confidence, yet know when and how to be humble. We have to take ownership of our choices, our actions, and most importantly, our reactions. When I started on this journey, I was walking with my good friend, Dr. Coco Welton. And the Mariah Institute of Creative Intelligence, he used to always tell us one thing. He said, most people do not want to take responsibility for their life. Because I would ask him, I said, man, why do you see these people getting involved with all of these organizations and all these things where they just, if they tell them to go this way, they go this way. They tell them to turn this way, they go this way. They tell them don't listen to the doctor, they don't listen to the doctor. They say, whatever they tell them, they do. They get in trouble, they go put themselves in a booth and tell somebody else. And let them handle it. People do not want to take responsibility for their life. That's the one little nuance that the New Thought movement kind of brought to the table. You need to show up for yourself. Amen. You need to understand that the God that you're praying to gave you every tool you need to fix whatever you need that needs fixing. That's right. And you need to just get a close, personal relationship with Him and not tell somebody else to pay you like that. That's right. That's right. You can do it. That's right. Amen. Last but not least, we have to be sober. Sober means don't overindulge in anything. Don't get drunk on your material success. Come on. Nor should you wallow in disappointment and despair. A sober mind maintains balance. You need a balanced mind, a balanced body, and a balanced soul. A sober mind is clear of all negative thought. A sober mind nourishes its body with spiritual food. A sober mind is free of worldly pollution. Keep your system clean of all things that are unlike that which created you. A sober mind is a clear mind. It's one that thinks, it's one that contemplates, it's one that imagines all that it becomes and demonstrates it as its predominant thought. You know, we're familiar with these statements, as a man thinketh, so is he. Or as a woman thinketh, so is she. It is done unto you as you believe. Ask, and you shall receive. These are all popular sayings, some scriptural, but they're very popular in the New Thought movement. But Ernest Holmes, in our textbook, chapter 16, for those of you who didn't look, Principles of Successful Living, he points something out that you got to keep top of mind. He doesn't want you to get the wrong idea. He says, this is not, I'm going to repeat, this is not a name it and claim it world. You will not get everything that you want because a lot of the things that you desire interfere with the well-being of someone else. But the good news is, you already have access to whatever it is that you need and desire. You have access to an understanding of spiritual law, and if you use it rightly, you will get what you want. He says there's no free lunch. You can't get something for nothing. Everything you want in this life has to be paid in full with mental and spiritual coin. Yeah. Your Benjamins, your Grants, your Jeffersons, and not even your Tubmans will work when you lay it in the hospital. You need to have spiritual coin. In a spiritual transaction, there are no discounts. There are no sales, there's no credit, and there's definitely no layaway. It's a like-for-like transaction. Fair exchange is no right. You can't demonstrate peace through war. You can't contemplate limitation and demonstrate financial freedom. You can't fully comply with an infinite law if you see your life as a finite expression. You see, God's law has no limits, but our thinking sometimes is what becomes limiting. Yeah. That's right. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Sometimes we ask the question, what is God's will? That question sometimes is hard for us to answer. But we can figure it out through the process of deduction. Because we know what God's will is not. Yeah. God's will cannot be death because God is life. Yeah. God's will cannot be hate because God is love. That's right. God's will cannot be confusion because God is a God of peace. God's will cannot be poverty because God is abundance. God's will cannot be religious dogma because God is a universal presence. You see, Thomas Stewart put it this way: we should interpret the will of God to be everything that is expressed without hurt. Anything that will enable us to express a greater life, more happiness, and more spiritual power, so long as it does not harm anyone else, must be the will of God. The question then becomes, does the success that you seek, if you acquire it, will it bring about peace on earth and goodwill to all men? Will it bring about joy and happiness just for you? Or will it produce some joy and happiness for others? Will your prosperity also prosper your family and your community while harming no one? You see, Reverend Amon came to us in the first message for this month, and he told us that miracles are the will of God. See, miracles is just God's normal stuff. Yeah. It's a miracle to us, but it's everyday work for him. Yeah. You see, when we get what we want, he says, if we seek it in harmony with the universe and we don't get it, that's the miracle. You see, God's nature is always to express more of itself. God's nature is always to constantly regenerate itself. That's why he gave us the example that if you cut down the tree, you cut back the limbs to nubs, eventually they're going to grow back. Yeah. He even told us that if you cut the tail off of a reptile, the tail will grow back. But I got some news for you. If you pull the root of the tree up, the branches will not go back. If you cut the head off the reptile, the tail is not going to go back. Because you separated it from the mind that tells it what to do. And when you take away the mind of God, when you take away the Christ consciousness, nothing can happen in your life. It won't go back.
Yeah, that serves.
Point being, you don't want to get disconnected from the source.
That's right.
Amen.
You got to stay connected to the Christ mind.
Yeah.
You have to. Because we all know we can do all things through the Christ that strengthens us.
Yes.
But everything requires a thought. Everything starts with contemplation. And then Reverend Paul came along, and he reminded us to be the best that we already are. He pointed us to Genesis chapter 2, where it describes creation. It describes creation of man and woman, and it describes how it was done in the ultimate of perfection. Yeah. And then he said, we only had one job, just one, and we couldn't do it right. Scripture says to dress it and keep it, which means to develop in consciousness the original pure idea in which you were created. It says, don't eat from the tree of good and evil. To eat means to think. Don't allow your error of thinking to have you focus on nothing but your material pleasures. Because error thinking separates you from your spiritual truth. And since we got separated from our spiritual truth, we've been trying ever since to regain our perfect status with God. We are constantly challenged to make the right choices. Ernest Holmes says it this way. He says, there is an intelligence within us that knows. A divine guidance is available to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist in India. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim in Africa. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian in America. The divine law existed thousands of years before any religion was ever created. So you see, my playbook, this Bible, it tells us clearly that there is no mediator between God and man except Christ. I'm going to say it one more time. There is no mediator between God and man except Christ. Now that's a true statement. Because Christ represents the truth about yourself. Christ is the perfect spirit in man as man. His only purpose was to teach us the truth about our relationship with God. In that understanding, in that wisdom, and in that love is where your success lies. He told you that these things I do, and even greater things shall you do. What is described as miracles by us is a natural expression of the law of the Christ mind. That's why the Apostle Paul told us we must have the mind of Christ, because we have the same access to God's universal intelligence. Our success begins and ends with our personal relationship with God. See, I know some of you New Thought folks, you get all upset when I start talking about Jesus. But instead of running from Jesus, you need to be trying to be more like Jesus. You have to be truthful. Jesus is and was and will always be the truth and the life. He demonstrated that no one comes to the Father unless he knows his truth and his kinship with the Father, unless he's convinced that he has access to the power of the Father. John 14:6 says, no one comes to the Father except by me. By me, he didn't mean my religion. He didn't proclaim one, nor did he give us one. Me is the Christ consciousness he came to elevate us to and define the principles he shared. That's what me is. Me is the way he talked, the way he walked, the way he thought, and the way he acted. Jesus was also faithful. The faith faculty is the key to spiritual realization. No worthy goal can be attained without our faith. Matthew 9:29 says, Jesus says, according to your faith, it is done. You see, faith is the substance that accomplishes all things, and it brings results that are seemingly miraculous. Jesus also taught us how to pray. Matthew 6:9-13. He says, our Father in heaven, the Holy Spirit Father, the highest, most advanced form of universal thought. He says, holy is thy name. Your nature, your spiritual wholeness is when you're completely aware of your unity with God. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Divine ideas produce perfect harmony. Yes. Give us this day our daily bread. Constantly give us the substance that sustains our mind, our body, and our soul. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Give up the false thoughts of lack that cause us to think less of ourselves and others. That's right. Take away all my temptations. Remove our desire for sense pleasure and deliver us from evil. Remove all the thoughts in my mind that are unlike God. For thine is the kingdom. God is divine protection. God is perfection. God is the power and the glory forever. With God, you can do anything. Yeah. In glory, you can realize your divinity and your unity with God. Yes. Always and forever. Jesus was more importantly loved. Matthew 5:44. He told us to love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who persecute you. Come on. Now, I know all y'all got some issues. Those words are very clear. And I will go out on a limb, Revelation. There's nobody in this room, including me, that ain't mad at somebody for something. Somebody. How many of you are praying for those who persecuted you? Come on. Huh? I got one man in the room. He made it plain that love can change any condition. He loved us enough to absorb all of our errors, feel all of our pain. He demonstrated a renewed body, a renewed mind, and a new soul with a resurrected consciousness. He was also imparting wisdom at all times. And in Matthew 19:23, he told us that it's easier to put a rope through a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, my mother taught me how to sew. My wife sewed, and every once in a while, I would ask to thread a needle. Now, you know, that is not an easy task. Trying to thread that needle. Can you imagine trying to put a rope through the eye of a needle? But he was trying to get us to understand that someone seeking his sensation and his value in personal wealth and not in spiritual knowledge can't get in. So I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how famous you are. I don't care how successful you are. If you don't have a personal relationship with God, you cannot succeed. He told the disciples, he said, look guys, I want you to come hang out with me, but I want you to leave all your worldly possessions behind. Yeah. Don't take nothing. Just follow me, speak as I speak, pray as I pray, act as I act, do as I do, and you'll have everything that you need given to you. But he also taught them to be responsible. Yeah. In Matthew 10:15, he provides the tools to be responsible for your well-being and the well-being of others. He says, there's no power in material things. He told them to stay out of Samaria, which is that place of mixed thoughts, when you get confused whether you want to do the right thing or the wrong thing. You're a holy roller one day and in the club the next. Stay out of that place. He says, go out and gather sheep, meaning go out and help the spiritually lost. He encouraged them to heal the sick, meaning go forth and impart spiritual truth to all that came their way. He allowed them to do as he did, cleanse the leper, meaning purify your thinking. And most importantly, But most, or I should say last and not least, he told them to be sober. He told them to have a clear mind, to have no doubt in the knowing of your relationship with God. Yes. He says, when you're sober and you're clear, who you are, and what you are to God, all you have to do is ask. Ask. Always seek knowledge. So in Matthew 7 through 11, that's 7 through 11. Both lucky numbers. This is what he says. He says, ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be open to you. For whoever asks receives, and who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door is open. Or who is the man among you who, when his son asks for bread, you'll hand him a stone? Or if he should ask him for fish, you will hand him a snake. If your son, those who are seeking Christ, that's your son. Those who are in search of, those who are looking forward to, those who are growing in Christ. If they ask you for bread, if they ask you for the spiritual substance and words of truth that allow them to spend their days and nights in prayer and meditation, will you give them a stone? The stone which represents intellectual and material reasoning. Someone comes to you for spiritual knowledge and you're going to tell them what you think they should do. Instead of giving them the opportunity to commune with God and find out what the Lord wants him or her to do. Yeah. Then he says, if he asks for fish, which is the ideas of increase, will you give him a snake? That snake is that human judgment and false appearance. Come on. So if somebody comes to you and asks you to encourage them in their idea to better their life, you're not going to judge them and give them, oh, you know you can't do that because I tried it and it didn't work for me. You see, a sober mind knows the difference between a stone and bread. A sober mind knows the difference between fish and a snake. A sober mind is not impaired by material thoughts. A sober mind is not clouded by lustful sensations. A sober mind is not intoxicated with limitation and fear. That's why we need to be more like Jesus. We need to know our truth. Yes. We need to remain faithful. Yeah. We need to always stay prayerful. We need to always practice unconditional love. We need to make certain that we are spiritually wise and that we take responsibility for our life. We got to stand up and not get drunk on our material success. You see, success is based on relationships. That's why I told you I was rich, not wealthy. Because I value and appreciate all of my relationships. Amen. In particular the one I have with God. Yes. Yes. You see, when I meet with young people, when they're about to decide or they've already decided, they come to see me and want to get married. Yeah. I take them to these 4 steps, these 4 meetings that we have. But the crux of the whole thing is I talk to them about what I call the pecking order. Because if you remain in the pecking order, not only will your marriage have the potential to last, your life will have the potential to prosper. And that pecking order is real simple. First and foremost, put nothing ahead of your personal relationship with God. That's right. There always has to be numero uno. Because that personal relationship with God is going to make you the best mental, physical, and spiritual person you can be. And if you're the best mental, physical, and spiritual person you can be, you're going to be the best husband or the best wife. You're going to be the best father or the best friend. Secondly, if you're blessed enough to have Your spouse or your significant other is always number two. Then come the children. Then come your extended family. And last but not least, but last and least, I should say, is whatever you do for a living, whatever your vocation is, whatever you do to make money and take care of yourself, always keep that on the bottom. Because what happens in our relationship, we get married and we all woody, and along comes Little Johnny. And Little Johnny jumps to the top of the list. My baby is the most important thing to me. And when Little Johnny goes to college and leave the house, you and your husband do this. Right. Because you neglect to nurture what's most important. Yeah. Some folk, you don't know nothing about them other than what they do, what they own, where they live, and what they drive. They identify themselves with the job that they have, or the talent that they have, or the car that they drive, and where they've been. You can hear about vacation for 6 months. Good stuff. We all want to experience it. We all want to live it. We all want to share it. But don't put it at the top of the list.
That's right.
You see, because when you make all that money, you've been all them places, and you've been rich and famous, none of it's going to help you when you live like this. Not one. The only thing that's going to help you in that situation is your relationship with God. That's it.
That's right. All right.
I said that I was dedicating this to my good friend Adolph Duke. And as I've already explained to you, I didn't pick him because of his education. I did not pick him because of his work career. I did not pick him because he's a successful entrepreneur. I picked him because his biggest success in his life is the love, admiration, and respect that he has for his family, his friends, his employees, and community, and that they have for him. Yeah. That's why I chose to dedicate this message, this Father's Day, to my dear friend Adolph Duke. Yeah. So all I want to say to all of you who want to continue to be a successful man or a successful woman, you only need to do one thing. Use the truth. Use your faith. Use your prayer. Use the love. Use the responsibility. Use your wisdom. Stay sober. Yes. And maintain that personal relationship with God no matter what it appears to be around you. God bless you.